Hi everyone, we are approaching the end of Vlogmas 2022 and I thought it would be a great time to talk about my favorite things from this past year. It's been an interesting year in terms of stuff that I've used, in part because I did try to do for the second half of the year a no/low spend. And if you haven't already seen my video on my 2023 no spend, then be sure to check that out. I will link it down below. Because of that, some of these items I already had and some of them were items that I got this past year. I have them divided into a handful of categories, and for each category I actually have two things. Sir, you may hear Odin crying in the background because his favorite thing now is to get into the garage like a little shit. And currently he is crying at the garage door trying to get out there again. There's nothing interesting. I guess there is something interesting out there. All right, let's start with the home category. First and foremost was a birthday gift to myself. It was money that I used from family members to go towards this because it was a pricey present, but it was the Roomba J7 Plus with the little bin that it dumps into on its own, with a house with 3 pets and 4 adults, all of whom who have longer hair and shed like a motherfucker. Having the Roomba has made life a lot easier when it comes to keeping the house hair-free and relatively clean. I can't bend over as well as I would like to. Normally I find vacuuming to be kind of meditative, but if I vacuum more than a little tiny bit, like a small mess or something, in any given time, it winds up putting me on my back for the rest of the day because of my large kidneys getting in the way. So having the Roomba has just been a really great way to keep the house on track. The biggest issue I run into is staying on any sort of a schedule with it, but that's not really required. I'll use it when I need it, but I would like to get on a better schedule with it, and that's something I sort of attempted this year, but I'm definitely gonna work on more next year. The second home item is a relatively new product to me. I got it in the last couple of months, mostly because my eating habits have changed, which has been a thing with dialysis on its way and being in end-stage renal disease. My appetite has been very bad lately, very poor, and when I find something that I'm okay with eating, I kind of go all in on it until I get tired of it because it's the only way I can guarantee I'll get some calories into me on any given day. And lately I have been really into getting deli ham and deli cheese. Now, not just like prepackaged lunch meat, but getting the sliced stuff from the deli at the grocery store. Sir, in my grocery store, they actually do pre-slice, like in the mornings, they'll slice up a bunch of like some of the more popular stuff and have it out there. And for me, keeping it fresh and not all gross in the plastic bag was kind of difficult getting back in and out of it. And I really dislike the feel of like hammy juices on my hands. And so having a container that would work really well for them was important to me. And so I have these PrepWorks containers that are meant for deli meats and cheeses. They make a few different kinds of them. The ones I got are the divided ones in case one of my kids decides they want turkey that week, I can separate the meats. So these containers have just been working really, really well. They're a little bit of a pain in the ass to close and get the latch down, but they're working really great. The only caveat is I would not store meat and cheese in the same container because meat tends to have more condensation, whereas the cheese doesn't, but the condensation can make the cheese go bad faster. But these have been great. I use them. They basically have been my way of storing the tavern ham and sharp cheddar that I buy at the grocery store every single week until, of course, I get tired of that and it's something new that I go after. Speaking of food, I have 2 recipes that surged right to the top of my list this year, and I will link them below, as well as my Pinterest. Pinterest kind of functions as my recipe book in some way. That's where I sort of collect everything that I find on the internet, and these 2 recipes, both out of all the ones I tried this year, and I did try a bunch of them, these were the 2 I liked the most. The first one is a chimichurri recipe, and it's pretty basic, but one of the things I liked about it was it gave suggestions for changing out the different herbs. It went really well with my green stock, more on that later, but we have decided as a family that it is just most excellent. I even have a tiny little food processor I bought to be able to make chimichurri sauce on the regular. If you like chimichurri, it's a good basic recipe that you can use and adapt to whatever you happen to have in your kitchen. The second one is a slow cooker pork tenderloin recipe, and I already have one that involves balsamic vinegar that I really, really love. But this one actually uses a different kind of mix of spices, and you cook it with potatoes and carrots and onions and vegetables. And the reason it is a favorite this year is not because it's super out of the ordinary. It's not. But what it really kind of turns into is like a stew, but with pork tenderloin instead of beef. I love stew. I love beef stew. I love it in the crock pot. It's easy to make. Both of my kids have decided they don't like it, so I don't make it anymore, and that was one of my go-to cold weather, easy crock pot meals. This pork tenderloin recipe, they do like. So it has replaced the beef stew in my rotation, and it's easy. It's actually probably a little cheaper to make. I've found that you can sometimes get pork tenderloin for less than stew meat, so it works out. My next category is pet. And the first thing in my category is actually not a thing, it is a cat, and that is Mr. Odin. As much as he has been interrupting me while I'm filming this video, and as much as he has been deep in his menace mode of kittenhood, getting him this year was delightful for all of us. We were missing some of that special orange cat energy in this house since we lost Loki last year. And if you've never had an orange cat, you might not know what I'm talking about. But as somebody, this is the third orange cat in my life, and in my personal, like, living with life, more than that with other cats in my family. But orange cats just seem to have a specific flavor to them. If you go to the subreddits on Reddit, there's one called Ginger Mafia, there's one called One Orange Brain Cell. Orange cats have just a particular sort of modality of their life, and Odin is no exception. On top of that, the fact that he and Layla have become best friends, and he and Lulu are now, they're friendly work acquaintances at this point. It just has been great to add him. He really has completed our little household. Secondly, I couldn't figure out which one of these this was, so the one I have linked is a similar one, but I love our backseat cover for Layla when she rides in the car with us. We have tried a couple of them. The ones that we have tried in the past, she's like, they've been kind of nylon-y and she's slid around on them and she hasn't been able to get comfortable. This one has a level of padding to it and it works like a hammock. So it hangs off of the back seat. It tucks, these things tuck into the back seat to keep it in place, and then it hangs off of the front seat so that if I have to come to a quick stop, she won't tumble into the crevasse, and she just is very comfortable in it. We were really hoping to use it on a road trip this year with Layla to go to Oregon when my kids were already there with my sister, but that didn't happen for a multitude of reasons, and so I am looking forward to when we are able to take her on a trip. Once I've started dialysis training and we have an idea of how to travel while I'm on dialysis, I'd love to take her on a road trip in it because I think she'll be very comfortable. Like I said, the one I'm linking is not the exact same one, but any hammock style back cover for if you have a bigger dog, I think is a really good investment if you drive around a lot with them. We're into the land now of beauty and clothes, and I have two items here like I have in every category. The first item is a beauty item. It is a mascara. It is the Thrive Cosmetics, I don't remember, it has a name, but I don't know. It's their mascara. It's the mascara that they sell. I get the one in black, which also has a special name, but it's the black one. It's a tubing mascara, which I have never had a lot of experience with, but I have found that of all the mascaras I have used in my life, this has been the one that I have been so happy with that I keep rebuying. I used a different one. I used the voluminous whatever L'Oreal, the one everybody loves, because I had it in between when I was on my nose bend and I disliked it strongly. The biggest reason I was not thrilled with the Thrive Cosmetics one is having to order it on the website, but I'll just order 2 or 3 at a time with one of their bundles and just have them until they run out. So definitely I have found my mascara piece. I have no real interest in trying anything else except for maybe one of the other colors of their mascara. I don't know how well that would show up behind my glasses or not. The other item in this category are my slippers. They're the Deerforms, what are they called? Women's Fireside Sydney shearling fur slippers. They're slip-on like mule style slippers and they have a nice hard bottom. When I first bought them, I bought the pink ones and I thought that they would be great for around the house, but I had been so used to wearing slippers that actually served as like a shoe with like a back on them. I was really struggling with them, and so I gave them to Sunny. And then sometime in the winter, all of my slippers were so soft, I needed something with a hard bottom to like walk outside when it's cold and when the ground might be icy to go like get the mail or whatever. And my slippers weren't working, so I would use Sunny's slippers because they had the nice hard bottom on them. And then I kept wearing them like that. Sunny started getting irritated at me. So I finally ordered myself a pair, this time in gray, and now they are my absolute favorite slippers. If you've been watching my Vlogmas, they are the slippers I was wearing when I accidentally went to Target and didn't realize I hadn't put actual shoes on, but they made it through the store. These are they're comfortable. They come in wide widths, which is really important to me because I do swell at night with the kidney disease. So I have space to be comfortable in them while they still don't fall off my feet. I just really like them. They're good indoor-outdoor slippers, and they have served me very well and hopefully will continue to serve me well as I move into the new year. Next category is books, and I have two of them, one of which I had already read before, but I reread this year. The other one was new to me. The one I have reread before is actually fiction, but this year it got a renaissance in my life because of the show House of the Dragon, and that is the George R.R. Martin encyclopedia history book of the Targaryen family, Fire and Blood. The show House of the Dragon is based on the chunk of that book that has to do with the Dance of the Dragons Civil War. It's kind of dry, written like a history book, but it's also written like a history book in the sense that it acknowledges that its sources are flawed and they don't know what actually happened some of the time. It's a perspective I find very engaging and I really like it. I'm almost at the point where I wish he would just finish the second half of that, which would cover the other half of the Targaryen dynasty, rather than finishing the series, because I just don't think he's ever going to finish the series. I think I have a higher chance of getting that book than Winds of Winter, but I digress. Anyway, I wouldn't say that it's the most action-packed. There's a lot that happens, but because it is written in that style, if you are not into that kind of book, you may not like it. I love biographies. This book worked on many levels for me, and Jess has been enjoying it too. He started reading it after the first season was over. So hell yeah, Fire and Blood, rock and roll. The second book, the one that is new to me this year, is actually a nonfiction book. I didn't even buy this one. My sister sent this to me as a gift when I found out I was going on dialysis, and it is a book called Arranging Your Life When Dialysis Comes Home, The Underwear Factor by Linda Gromko, MD, and Jane C. McClure. It is a book about home dialysis, specifically home hemodialysis, and how you can incorporate it into your life without it taking over your life, especially when it comes to all of the supplies and how you set up your house for it. The story behind this book is that the doctor is a family practice doctor. Her husband went into acute renal failure and decided to do at-home hemodialysis. But then in that time frame, when they were already overwhelmed with the supplies and everything else, they had to sell their house. And trying to sell a house when part of it looks like a medical facility was not working for them. The other author is their interior designer who came in to stage the house and camouflage all the stuff. And they realized that it's important for people who are doing home hemo to not feel like their life is being taken over by dialysis and to do it in a way that is not expensive, that can be cost effective. So that's what this book is all about. The underwear factor is the idea that their nephrologist said that the reason you would do dialysis at home is so you could do it in your underwear if you wanted to. This book has been very helpful in me being able to figure out how we're going to set this up in a way that really just incorporates dialysis into our life as just another piece of it rather than becoming the focal point of it, because that is very important to me. It's the whole reason I want to do home hemo in the first place. I recommended it to the people at the home hemo clinic that I'm going to be going to. If you are ever in the position to either be an at-home dialysis patient or you have somebody in your life who is going to be doing at-home dialysis, 10 out of 10 recommend this book. My next category is plants, and I am not actually putting any of my plants in this category, but rather plant accoutrement, accessories. First and foremost was recommended by several of you when I was talking about going out of town, and that is the terracotta gradual plant watering spikes. I get some of the little bulbs on them where you can put water on them. I'll link them down below. I have some bigger spikes that you actually use with a wine bottle as like your reservoir, but they are great. They have made it so I only have to check in on my plants a couple times a week. I've heard in some places once a week is what you need, but I'm in Denver and it's very dry here. The water evaporates very quickly, so I do need to check them a couple times a week, but it has made plant care much more doable for me, and I have killed less plants since getting those, so hell yeah, spikes. Secondly is my green stalk. I talked about it a shit ton this summer. I'm going to continue to talk about it next year when I plant it again. I'll link a vlog down below where I talk about the green stalk, but it is basically a container garden that works vertically. So you can plant many things in a single column. It is fantastic for someone like me who has trouble bending over because of the size of my kidneys. I just really love it. It went really well with that chimichurri recipe I brought up because I had a whole bunch of cilantro and parsley going in there. Next year, I really want to, I'm going to skip out on the tomatoes and the peppers. I wasn't very successful with those, and just do half of it green beans, the other half herbs and strawberries, I think is what my plan is going to be. And I'll be sure to document that when I get closer to it, which will not be for a while because we're deep in the freezing part of Denver weather. Next two items are tech related. The first one is my AirPods. I have I want to say the 3rd generation Pro with the wireless charging case. I've had 3 sets of AirPods because I've lost a couple of them and then found them, and now I have them all again. They're just fantastic. And the reason I was afraid to get them because I was afraid I would lose them, like the individual one. That doesn't seem to be my problem. My problem seems to be losing the whole thing, case and all. The reason I like them, like I use them for a lot of things, but the biggest reason that they were like a #1 favorite for me is when I walk Layla. Because I lost them and now I have 2 sets because I found both sets. I have one that's always charging that I use for work downstairs and one that is upstairs next to my dog walking gear. And then I just swap them when the case upstairs gets to be a little dead. But I use them when I take Layla for a walk. I put on my jacket, grab her leash, grab her harness, grab a poo-poo bag, and then I pop in my earbuds and put on whatever YouTube video or podcast I've been listening to, and it just makes dog walking so much better for me. I am not someone who likes to be alone with my thoughts when I'm walking a dog. I want to be listening to something, and they have just, the convenience factor is perfect, and I love that I'm able to leave the case up there for a few days, several days, as a matter of fact, before I need to swap them to charge again because the case holds a charge for so long. The second tech item are my new studio lights. I continually am looking for better studio lights, especially since when I film face down videos or hands down videos, I'm doing it in the basement. The light down there is very yellow. I do want to swap those bulbs out, but that's a project for like next year. For lights, like I've had multiple studio lights. These ones work great. They have features I don't even use. The biggest reason I like these is that they clip to my desk and the footprint in my office is smaller. So fuck yeah for that. If you are somebody who does any planner type videos and you need something that clips to your desk, check out these lights. Next category is art stuff. I would say art supplies, but one of them is not really a supply. The first is my Princeton Heritage Brush round number 6. If you are a patron and you pop into any of my tutorials I post on Patreon, that's almost always the brush that I'm using. If you're gonna spend money on one decent paintbrush, that one is a perfect one. It holds a point really well. It holds a lot of paint and water, but it still has a nice snapback, so it could work well for lettering. I have other brushes I use for lettering, but this one could totally be like your one and done brush. Get a nice fine tip and a nice big stroke, depending on how hard you press the brush down. It's just a great overall paintbrush, and it is not super expensive. So if you're looking to buy a better brush than those like packs at Michael's that shed all over the place, this is definitely one to check out. The second item is actually a book. And again, my patrons, if they've been around this year, might recognize it. It is a massive hardcover book from the Smithsonian called Natural History: The Ultimate Visual Guide to Everything on Earth. And basically it is full of the most gorgeous photography of all sorts of different life forms and organisms on Earth. It's massive, and it has so many great photos in it, and I use it for reference photos for practicing painting different things, especially things that are kind of out of my comfort zone. It is just a beautiful reference book. If you are somebody that is all into art, especially art that has to do with nature, this book, or if you're just into nature in general, this book could be a gorgeous coffee table book. It is an absolutely stunning reference book, and it could be a really fun gift for somebody. I know Christmas is already past, but it could be a great gift for somebody in your life who might be a natural history kind of buff. Time to talk about pens. These are my top 2 pens of the year. If you have watched any of my Plan With Me's, neither of these should be a surprise. The first one is the Pentel Energel RTX 07. I really like the Energel Klena. I think that was my favorite pen last year, and I still use those, but sometimes I want a thicker a thicker point, and the Energel RTX 07 has a thicker point than either of the two you can get in the Klenna. These are easy to get. You can buy them at the Target or at the drugstore. They write very smooth. The ink is nice and black. It dries pretty quickly. It's a very comfortable pen. It's not the cutest pen in the world, but it writes really well, and I just love them. I have them all over the house. I have them in blue and red as well, because I do use those colors sometimes, but yeah, they're everywhere. They're just great pens. I don't even know what else to say about them besides the fact that they're a great basic gel pen. The other pen is a fine liner that was relatively new to me this year. On accident during my no spend, I ran out of a small fine liner and I needed a new one, and I went to Michael's with a voucher, and the only one they had was a different one than I was used to, and now suddenly I have a whole box of them and I love them. And that is the Staedtler Pigment Liner 01. I really like how it stands up to my heavy hand. I like how it looks in my planner. I like that as it starts to dry out, it goes to like a nice dark gray rather than a black, and I find that very pretty. The biggest issue I run into them is that I run dry on those a lot faster than in other pens, but I really like how it writes. So for right now, I think it's my favorite like fine liner to use in my planner, because the ink is not as rich black as like the Pitt Artist pens or the Microns are. It is not my preferred pen for drawing, but for writing in my planner, it is now my current favorite, which means I can conserve my other fine liners for other aspects of my art. And then finally, we have planner stuff. The first one is one that was introduced to me this year by Julie's Plans, and that is the Slice tool. It is a ceramic cutting tool that is shaped like kind of like a pencil. Very easy for me to hold with my tendonitis. So much easier to control than all the other X-Acto knife type things I've used before. I've used it when I'm cutting like Dutch door type things in my bullet journal. It also works really great for cutting vinyl stickers when my usual palette knife that I use for washi tape cutting won't work. It is just an excellent little tool. You can buy replacement blades for it. It's not that expensive, and it does work really well while being a little less terrifying to use than an X-Acto knife. And then finally, my number one favorite thing for the whole year should be no surprise if you've been watching me, and that is my Moxie Life planner. It is both my favorite because I got back into sticker planning this year, and that was just so refreshing. But I think the reason I really loved it the most this year was because having my goals and my weekly plan for my life in the same planner, where I was checking in on both every single week, it just caused me to really keep my shit at the forefront of my mind. I also really like the goal setting system. It suits where I am in my life right now. I did a cover for them for this year's. That's going to be my planner for next year. That was exciting. But like, after a whole year of using this system, I can't imagine using a different one. When I started thinking about my planners for next year, for my personal planner and my goal setting, it was no-brainer. I knew exactly what I was doing. There wasn't even a question. I have reviewed a million different planners this year, and while my work planner is always seeming to be in flux, my personal planner, I have there was no hesitation. And that feels really good. Sometimes just knowing what the answer is feels really good. So that's where I'm at. And those are my favorite things for this year. What was your absolute favorite thing that you used this year? Whether it was new to you or it was an old favorite, let us know in the comments below. I cannot wait to see how these favorites videos look next year when I'm on a no spend and I'm only using the stuff that I have. So that's exciting. So make sure to subscribe and stay tuned. And until next time, my friends, thanks for watching and peace out.